What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another GGF video, and today we'll be taking a look at the ROG Crosshair X870E Extreme. Now, ROG sent this board out for a Computex build, which I have coming up. So I thought I'd do a quick unboxing and overview, compare it to the Intel counterpart, which is the Z890 Extreme, and also compare it to the older AMD Crosshair, the X670E Extreme. Not so much in terms of hardware and so on, but more about the physical appearance, the aesthetics, and so on. So I just want to do this video because once I get this board in the build, once it goes to Computex, I won't see it for a couple of months. So I wanted to get this done now, out of the way, and then once it's in the build, it's pretty much done and dusted. So let's put them side by side. AMD board here, and then to my right is the Intel. Let's get this nice and straight. So as you can see, if you're standing back, you'd say these boards are pretty much exactly the same. Now, personally, I wish that ROG did something just a little bit different to distinguish the AMD over the Intel. That might just be me saying that because I've used the Intel for quite a bit. I've had this from launch, and now that this one has come out, the AMD, I'm thinking, well, it looks exactly the same. I do like different boards. I like different aesthetics. I like to see things new, and now that I've got the new AMD, I'm kind of thinking, well, it looks like the Intel. Now, of course, it's all AMD hardware. It's different specs than the Intel, but the aesthetics are very, very similar. We still have the sliding out screen, which you can see here. Same as on the Intel, although the Intel looks just a fraction larger in terms of width of the screen. Now, you might be running, well, why did it just slide like that? In case you didn't see my Intel Extreme unboxing, I did an overview. It slides just that little bit when you are using a rear case fan. So this width here, and then the internal bezel width, by the time you install a 120mm or a 140mm fan in the back of your case, if it is protruding enough where it's going to be covering that screen in this position, you can just simply slide it out this way, and that'll give you that little bit of clearance to see everything on that screen. Is it 100% needed? Probably not, but it is a nice little touch. Just something that ROG are thinking about to make it so you can see that screen completely. Now, some other aesthetics that are a little bit different. The slot configuration has been shuffled a little bit. It's not as high up for the M.2, but when you do put these side by side for the slot config, they actually do line up. Although the Intel, you do get that by 4 up the top. It's just that the M.2 on the Intel is just a little bit higher up than on the AMD. Apart from that, the ROG eye is definitely larger on the AMD. I think ROG is starting to run out of room on their boards now on how large they can make this eye. It's going to be crazy. The Intel is a bit smaller, but on this one, it is consuming a lot of this M.2 area. Although once you put a large card in here, you're pretty much not going to see it. So I don't really see a big deal on that. I think that's it on covering or comparing that. I just want to get this one out of the way now, and then we will move over to comparing it to the previous AMD, just in case you haven't seen all these boards side by side, because I do have the luxury to sort of compare these. A lot of people don't really have that same sort of luxury to see all these side by side, so I thought, why not just give you that look. Definitely on the previous AMD, the X670E, you can see there's a lot more glossy areas. It's kind of like this acrylic glass area. This whole area is a fingerprint magnet. Up here where you had that little screen which shows you the postcodes, the diagnostics, very, very fingerprint prone, and also this area on the I/O. So the main changes here, instead of this area, that was an animatrix display, we now have this slide out screen. Of course, that's glossy, that's just the way the screen is done, but then all the rest is either matte or it's just, I would say this matte chrome look, which I think looks a lot nicer in person than this mirror sort of glassy material. Heatsink design is kind of similar, but I must admit, I'm really digging the aggressiveness on these angles and the heatsink design on the previous generation, especially this bit here, where it just flows through this way, and here, like we're talking about an expensive top of line ROG Extreme board. I just think on this one, it's just a little bit subtle, a little bit bland, playing it a bit safe. This one just has that real oomph, that aggressive feel to it. Even on the Gene, the M-ATX sort of variant, it had the aggressive lines and slits, and that's also going to help with a bit of cooling as well, having those airflow channels in there. But definitely digging the aesthetics on the heatsink on that, but I think I'm digging the rest of the board on this one. So let's slide that out of the way. All of these three all had backplates, which is always welcomed, and of course on a board like this I would expect to see a backplate on something like this. As you can see, once again, that eye is over here, extreme down the bottom. You're not really going to see any of this. Thermal pads can be seen. Let me get that in focus. Might be hard to see, but thermal pads on the back there for some extra VM cooling. Some there on that backplate. Matte black once again, fingerprint magnet. So you're going to want to give that a clean before you put it in your case, or if you don't really care, you're not going to see it anyway. I mentioned the screen. All these boards are EATX. I think all the Extremes are always going to be EATX unless something crazy happens. The other highlighted features, we have your power reset controls. That's all standard. You're going to have your start, your flex. You can set that to reset. This here is pretty much exactly the same. I was just having a look at this before on the Intel. It's almost like they used the same piece of metal. This is metal, feels nice, exactly the same. The only difference is the USB 20 and the USB 10 are switched around on the Intel and the AMD. That's really the only difference on that part. So I don't know, just something a little bit different. I'm probably going on too long about that, but just, yeah, something a little bit different to make it more sort of feel special towards AMD for this board. Yeah, power reset, all your OC controls. I won't go through all of those because that'll probably be a whole video in itself, and I probably don't know what half of those do anyway because I'm not a crazy overclocking pro. Now the M.2 or the Q releases that AMD or ROG has had on the previous boards, they've got the M.2 Q release, the M.2 Q slide, the M.2 Q latch, and then the newer PCIe Q release. So the M.2 Q release is this one, only for the primary. You just push it down and out it goes. Very, very simple. No more pesky screw holes like on this one here. So there's only one here. A lot of other boards have one here and one here. Having to get those on and off was a bit of a mission, especially when it's inside a case. It makes it very hard to reach. Now you simply drop that and then out it goes. Drop it back in and you're done. M.2 slide. I did cover these in all my other videos, so if you have seen this, you can probably skip for this. This just slides in and then locks it in. Away you go. I believe there's another one of those here, and over here is the M.2 Q latch, which we can actually probably do that now while I'm talking about this. I got to get this off anyway. 4 screw holes for this, or 4 mounting holes. ASUS or ROG aren't really pushing towards quick releases for these because they say they get better mounting pressure when you always have a screw, which I think makes sense. Whenever you have something screwed down, you can always get much better, even as if it was something like a magnet or something that clips in. This one here is the Q release, like that, push it in. It's just an updated version of the one that you'd push it down and slide the latch around. This one just clips in by itself. And then this one over here is the same as the Q slide, and that's it. So the Q latch, Q release is this one, and then the Q slide is this one, and then the PCIe Q release is the one where when you're releasing your GPU, you just need to rock it now, and that'll release it from the latch. There's no button off to the side like there was previously. You don't need that anymore. It's built in to the latch itself. So all because it doesn't have that button does not mean it does not have the new Q release. It still has it. You just rock the GPU and it'll release it from the slot. Now we can see the board a little bit better. Power delivery is 20 plus 2 plus 2. For the power stages, there are dual heat pipes. On the previous AMD, I believe there was just one. So there's 2 heat pipes. Let's get a look inside. You can just see that shimmering there. 1, 2, and then it wraps around as well. Up the top there, it's a bit closed in. But yeah, 2 heat pipes. Try and get a closer shot on that so you can see that. Plenty of cooling, and then you have on the backplate as well for the extra bit for memory. 4 DIMM slots up to 256 gigabytes. That has been increased from 192 from when the boards launched. So 256, 8200 mega transfers on the 9000 series processors. Once again, ROG are featuring their Nitro Path DRAM tech. This is on their latest higher end boards. Basically, I can undo this. You can see the little logo telling you which is the preferred slot. And that basically improves the signal strength or signal integrity as it has a smaller pin design, and it gives you about 400 mega transfers improvement. So if you're trying to get that extra OC or get that extra XMP and it's a slightly higher overclock, getting those extra 400 may help with that. And they actually have latching at both top and bottom. I've always liked boards like that. I find it's easier to get DRAM modules in and out when you have these boards with the latch at the top and the bottom, and it just feels a little bit, although this looks a little bit wobbly, but this memory is very, very tall from Corsair, so that could also be the reason why it was a little bit wobbly. Moving down to the PCIe configuration, this is always a little bit confusing in these boards. I always get a lot of questions in these videos that why can't they put more slots? Why can't they put more M.2? Why does something get disabled? Why does this drop down to by 4? It's not really to do with ROG. It's not so much with the motherboard manufacturer. It's more with the chipset and the CPU. There's only so many lanes that come from the CPU and the chipset. I believe this latest AMD platform is 24 CPU lanes and 20 chipset lanes. Now they have to be shared between this whole board. CPU will get primary dedicated ones, and then the chipset will get others. So for this board, we have 2 PCIe 16 slots. So they're physically 16, but they both always will not run at by 16 electrically. So if you're running the first one, GPU, nothing else in the bottom, that'll run at by 16, no issues at all. When you're using both of these slots, so say you got a GPU in this one, you're running something like a sound card, a capture card, both of these will drop down to by 8. Now, if you're running a M.2 in slot number 3, which I believe will be this one, I can only assume it'll be 1, 2, 3. That means the top slot will run down at by 8, and then the bottom slot will run at by 4. Now, if you're running an M.2 in slot 2 and 3, the top slot will run at 8 by or by 8, and then the bottom slot will be completely disabled. So if you're going to actually max this whole board out with slot here for your M.2s, 2 in this one, you will have this bottom slot being disabled, and you will have this one running at by 8. So that's something to keep note when running that. Now for the M.2s, these 3 are running at Gen 5, which is pretty good. I haven't seen too many boards that run with 3 Gen 5 on the motherboard, and then the 2 on this DIMM.2 are locked at Gen 4, which I think is fine. I don't think we need all Gen 5 on the motherboard and the DIMM.2. Now in terms of the size for these, we have support for all the larger SSD spec, which is the 22110. I'm not sure the best way to say it. I'm used to saying 2280. So these are 2280 in size. That's just the form factor. This one is a dedicated 2280. You can't put anything larger in it, but you can see that all these other ones can be a little bit longer. That's for the 22110. Even on the DIMM.2, you can take out the quick release and put it over to the end, and that'll just give you that extra length SSD. I'm not sure too many people run them. This is definitely the standard for consumers, so it's just handy to have, but not necessarily needed. So yeah, we've got Gen 5, Gen 5, Gen 5, and then on the DIMM.2 are 2 Gen 4s. Now people always ask, what is this slot? When I do builds, they always ask me, what's this slot off to the side of my memory? Why didn't I put memory in it? Why is it there? It's kind of confusing. It's called DIMM.2, but it doesn't have anything to do with memory. So what you do is you can drop in a M.2 SSD in this one, like that, lock that in. You can drop an SSD in this one, like so. I won't put this back on, but this is just the heatsink. You put that back on, and then you get the key right, and then you undo the latch like this, and then you simply just slide it in, and that gives you 2 extra M.2. So it's got nothing to do with memory. You can't put a memory module in, and so on. Now, the reason why I don't use it in a lot of my builds, because I do like to leave, I like to leave it empty because I like to show off my memory. And once I get this back in to show you that this is quite large and it does kind of tower over the rest of the board. So if you had a block in there and you had your memory in there, look how chunky that is. Even for things like tube runs and so on, like it looks really nice. I like that aesthetic, nice matte black, but it is very big. And a lot of my builds, I don't need 5, 6 or so M.2 SSDs, so that's why I don't always use it. All right, moving down to another feature. This board is running a slim SAS port. So on the Intel Extreme, the Z890 Extreme, they dropped this. They brought it back on the AMD Extreme. This is basically a Gen 4x4 connector, mainly for those things like those U.2 SSDs, those NVMe PCIe SSDs. They can do like 15 terabytes, 30 terabytes. I got some of those in my main PC, but this is just a standard Gen 4x4 interface. You can run converter cables. You can convert these to, I believe, network cards. You can convert them to just a standard PCIe by 4 slot. Well, that would be a bit weird trying to mount a card in a normal case when you got this cable going up to a slot, but it's just an interface to run extra or external devices. For network and LAN, we have 2 LAN. We have a 10G, which is Marvel, and we have a Realtek 5G. Get that in focus over there. One there, which is pretty sick. Wi-Fi, we have Wi-Fi 7, 320 megahertz channel bandwidth, which is currently the latest. Mainly mid to high-end boards are having the 320 megahertz bandwidth, just gives you that higher throughput. And then for some of those who have issues with thinking they can get Wi-Fi 7 on Windows 10, it's actually only supported on Windows 11. You need Windows 11 24H2 for that. So that's just a tip in case you've got Windows 10 and you've been having issues trying to get your Wi-Fi 7 drives installed. I personally like Windows 10 myself. I had that issue the first time how many years ago when Windows or when Wi-Fi 7 came out. I had Windows 10 and I just could not get the driver to work, but you do need that Windows 11. Now, ASUS also have their quick, I don't know what these are called. They're probably called a Q something, Q release Wi-Fi or something. But I think a lot of brands are doing this now. Simply just put your Wi-Fi antenna in, push it in. You don't need to screw it in like previously. Saves a lot of time. In saying that, when I said saves a lot of time, I don't know how many times people are screwing and unscrewing their Wi-Fi antenna, but it is just a nice little feature to have. USB for the rear, we have a total of 12. We have 10 USB 10 gigabit, so 8 Type A. So Type A being your standard keyboard mouse, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So all the reds, so 8 Type A, USB 10. The remaining 10 are these two, which are Type C, USB drives, whatnot. Then we have 2 more to get the 12. So we have 8, the 2 makes 10, and then these 2 to make the 12 are the USB 40, and they also do DisplayPort as well. So pretty good I/O for the USB. Wouldn't say it's the most jam-packed I've seen, but it is still pretty decent. HDMI, BIOS flashback, clear CMOS. BIOS flashback, for those who for some reason haven't heard of it, used to only be on really high-end boards. I do like the shift that it's going down to more mid-tier and even entry-level boards. Basically, you can put a BIOS on a USB stick, format it right, name it correctly, pop it in there. You don't need a CPU, you don't need memory, you don't need anything installed. Plug in the power, plug in the USB stick. It's normally labeled with BIOS. It's not always this one. It could be this one, depending on the board. On this board, it's this one right here. Hold this down for a few seconds, and depending on the motherboard you have, this will light up. And on this board, because it has a screen, it actually shows you the progress of the status of the updating on this screen. Like, it has a little loading bar, and when it's done, it'll say BIOS load complete, and that's just a nice feature. I would no doubt expect that to be on a high-end board like this, and I'm pretty sure this board does have dual BIOSes as well. Let me go right up here. This one right here is the BIOS switch. So you switch this when you have power to the board, but the system's not on. So it's just power to the board, you haven't turned it on. Switch this and a little light will indicate if it's on BIOS 2 or BIOS 1, and then that gives you the dual BIOS. And I think we dropped that many years ago, but I'm glad to see that dual BIOSes are now back, which is good. Internal USB for your front panel connectors for your case. We have your USB 20. This does power delivery. We also get a lot of comments, or I see a lot of comments online saying, what do I need this 8-pin power for? That's if you want to run the power delivery. It even says PD power. That'll do 60 watt of your power delivery for fast charging and so on. If you're not using fast charging, you can still use these to plug into the case. You've got USB 10 and 20, which is pretty much standard. Haven't seen too many that gives you the dual 20. Down below here, we have dual USB 3. One there, that'll do 2. One there, that'll do 2. Don't think I mentioned 4 SATA on this board. 4-star SATA is pretty standard. I think on a high-end board like this, probably going to get less SATA and more of the other high-end features, and then more on the USB, your standard dual. I'm pretty sure these are like USB 2 or something. Therefore, your internal controllers, RGB hubs, fan controllers, and so on for those slower devices that don't need high-speed access. Then the rest of the rear I/O, I think there's really just HDMI and then your audio. That's it. So nothing too over the top. I know there are boards with more USB. People might think that's a little bit trimmed down, but that's pretty much it on this board. For price, it is still unknown. I know the Intel variant, the Extreme, launched towards the end of last year, and that one came out at, I think, $999 US, so bang on 1,000. I have a feeling with everything going on at the moment, the tariffs and all that, maybe this is why this board was delayed a little bit. It's probably going to be a little bit more than that. I know the MSI Godlike is, I think, the top tier board at the moment from MSI, and I think that's about $1,200-1,300. So I can only think this is going to be somewhere around that price. So don't quote me on that. When this board comes out, don't say, oh, I said it's going to be about $1,200-1,300. It could be more, it could be less. I just don't know, but that's just my ballpark figure on that one. But yeah, I think that's it on this video. Just wanted to get this quick unboxing, quick overview. Haven't done any testing because once I get this in the build, Computex is only 2.5 weeks away. So I need to smash this build out, get this board in there, get that sent away, and hopefully it all goes smoothly. But I want to thank ROG for sending this board out to take a look at, using the build. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.